What are some serial killer facts about serial killers that you find extremely interesting? The serial killer Bela Kiss liked to pickle people in barrels stored in his basement. Someone figured it out, but they couldn't get him because he was fighting in World War I. By the time they tracked him down, he had disappeared and left a dead guy in his hospital bed. He supposedly joined the French Foreign Legion and deserted that too, and I think history loses track of him after that, with the exception of one possible sighting as a janitor in New York. The janitor disappeared before anyone could confirm it. The Golden State Killer, known at the time as the East Area Rapist, would often break into the homes of couples, making the woman tie up the man. He would stack dishes on the back of the man and threaten that, if he heard the dishes fall, he would kill everyone in the house. Then he would rape the woman repeatedly and ransack the house for hours. At a community meeting about the rapist, a macho man stood up and went on a rant about how a real man would never let such a thing happen to him or his wife. The rapist proceeded to attack that man and his wife soon after, meaning he was attending the community meeting about himself. True story. Read up on the Evelyn Meredith killing. My cousin and my aunt, maternal, lived across the street from the Meredith home. My aunt still lives there. The Meredith house was torn down long ago and rebuilt. I believe the street number is the same. Evelyn Meredith had a 6-year-old son, same age as my cousin. Evelyn was going to send her boy across the street to my aunt's house so the three of them could go up to the Sierra on a day trip in the snow. The kid never arrived, so my aunt sent my cousin across the street to find out where he was. My cousin came back and told my aunt there was movement in the house, but no one answered. Around the same time, another neighbor saw something suspicious, I think Chase driving the Meredith car away from the house, and that neighbor went over to the home then called the police. This is how my cousin and aunt related it. It varies some from the Wikipedia article's version of events. If you read the book about the case written by former Sacramento homicide detective Ray Biondi, it mentions my aunt and cousin by name. Angel Vargas killed and ate at least 10 people. He only ate men because he said their meat tasted better than women's. He also wouldn't eat fat people because he thought they contained too much cholesterol. Journalist Vlado Tedeschi was caught when he reported on his own crimes and included information that hadn't been released to the public and only the killer could know. More info on Tedeschi. Of the 4 women who disappeared, 3 were found displayed signs of being viciously raped, molested and tortured before being strangled to death with a phone cord. Though the police had initially revealed that the women had been strangled, they had not said with what. Noticing that Tedeschi had correctly named the specific type of phone cord used, they arrested him on suspicion of murder. After questioning him, they obtained a search warrant for his home. His house was filled with pornography and notes about the crimes. He had been carrying out the murders, then writing about them in great detail for the paper, as if taunting the police. Fried Dahmer, towards the end, right before he got caught, had so many bodies in his apartment that he ran out of room and stored one victim in his bathtub. He proceeded to shower over him every day for a month. Think about that, straddling over a rotten corpse to get fresh and clean for the day. Unreal. Edit. Anyone wanting to see the pic referencing this, in one of the comments there are 3 links. Click the last one, and in the 6th row on the left you can see bathtub shower in background. Warning: very graphic. Thank you to the person that pointed this out. New to Reddit, hope I did this right. I was in Baton Rouge during the early 2000s when Derek Todd Lee was active in the city. I've shared the story before here, so I'll copy-paste my other post. At the time, I was dating a girl who roughly fit the physical profile of the victims. She was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle who lived in a mansion on the LSU lakes, and one evening calls me while driving back to their house from errands, and she is crying. There's someone following me, a white pickup truck. At this point, the suspect was believed to be driving exactly this. I've started driving around in circles, and it's still following me. I grabbed my roommate, and we were out the door. He drove and made the 20-minute drive to her aunt's house in 8 minutes. When we were approaching the interstate exit, I called and told her to head to the house. She was freaking out. He was still behind her, but she got to the house and ran inside. A minute later we pull up just as 2 houses down, on the opposite side of the street, a white pickup parks. I run in and check on her, and she confirms it is that truck that's been following her. Ask my roommate to get my back and head out there, go give a rap to the head of the truck, and trying my best to sound intimidating, I just stare the driver down and say, "You gotta get out of here, buddy. I don't know what you want, but you gotta get out of here." The driver nervously eyes me and drives off. I'm thinking, another stupid LSU student, a misunderstanding. She lost track of the car following her, and this is just some guy parking here just a few houses down from the famed submarine races parking spot on the lakes. I didn't see the guy again in person, but I recognized him when I saw him nearly a year later when the cops perp walked Derek Todd Lee, arresting him as the Baton Rouge serial killer. I saw the man I made eye contact with that night and realized what I stopped and how I didn't take seriously someone who was capable of murder many times over. I'll say films like Summer of Sam and Zodiac don't do justice to the citywide paranoia. How it's all everyone talks about, and how apprehensive everyone is. At the time of the trial, I shared an office with the DA's son-in-law and heard all sorts of details about the case. I've started looking up books, video and would really like to hear a documentary about it. I have a family member who briefly dated this guy. She almost but not quite fit the profile of his victims. One time when he picked her up, her adult son was visiting the house, met him, and shook his hand. He ghosted her after that. Also, my mom was living in a mobile home park in Wichita during BTK's killing spree. My dad was deployed overseas. They had a big German shepherd who she would put outside for a little bit every night before going to sleep, and she said for a while she had to bring him in early because he would just go crazy barking, growling, and snarling every night. Shortly after he stopped doing that, there was a BTK murder not too far from the mobile home park. Scary stuff. Some older homes in Wichita have a second landline installed by the door because he was notorious for cutting phone lines. People would come home and check the line by the door, then the other line, just to reassure themselves. Richard Kuklinski killed a man and left his body in an oil drum outside of a diner just to see how long it would take for someone to investigate. He would order sandwiches from the place and sit on the drum while he ate. He also made a clicking noise with his mouth when he was angry. If you heard that, you were as good as dead. If you like serial killers, UFOs, conspiracy theories, and stuff like that, I can't recommend last podcast on the left enough. It's insanely informative and also insanely funny. Kuklinski is my favorite episode by them. Not necessarily the killer himself, but the use of DNA ancestry websites to identify the chameleon killer and the Golden State Killer is fascinating. Edit. Just want to clarify since it seems like there's some confusion about how this is done. In both cases, they uploaded the killer's DNA as a fake profile to find family matches. Then they traced the family history from there and narrowed down the suspects by location, date, etc. Once they find a suspect, they test that person's DNA against the initial sample to confirm a match. Both cases have great podcasts where they go into detail about the process. When police eventually came to the house of Ed Gein, they found an absolute pigsty. Gein had been living alone since the death of his brother in a barn fire. It's speculated that Gein may have killed him and had let much of the house go into disrepair. They found countless body parts from his various grave-digging excursions, including a bag of wilted vaginas and, of course, the infamous skin lampshade and half-finished woman's suit made of human skin. There were maggots living in old dishes in the kitchen. It was the type of disorganized mess that you would expect from a man who spent his nights completely disconnected from reality. Except one room. His mother's room upstairs remained pristine, except for dust that had collected and seemingly untouched from the time of her death years earlier. He had such a fear or respect for his mother that he was afraid to set foot in her room long after she had died. He claimed to hear her voice criticizing him from time to time. This was the central experience that inspired Norman Bates' character to maintain his mother's home image in Psycho. Also a fun fact about Gein and Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle makes an offhand comment when leaving a diner that he had a cup of coffee and a slice of apple pie with cheese on top. In exchange for details to investigators after his capture, Gein requested the same meal. In the Zodiac killer case, the number one suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, had a lot of circumstantial evidence suggesting he was the killer. Enough for him to be certainly the Zodiac, but he was never apprehended due to the evidence coming out as negative. Circumstantial evidence: he lived in Vallejo near a couple of the murders, took one sick day off work, a day after one of the suspected murders happened. His mother gave him a Zodiac watch for Christmas which had the same symbol, was incredibly smart, and had knowledge about fingerprints and DNA, and may have planted false evidence. Spoke with his friend before the Zodiac murders, Don Chaney, about writing a novel about a man named Zodiac who killed couples at random with a gun and a torch attached to it, and taunt the police with letters. She told police he was going to Lake Berryessa on the day one of the murders happened, but went to the coast instead. Also admitted to having bloody knives in his car on the day of that murder, which he claimed he killed a chicken. The boot print left at one of the crime scene had the same shoe size as Allen and was a Wingwalker military boot. Allen had been in the Navy before, was supposedly able to write with his left and print with his right, in which the Zodiac letters are written in. A surviving victim picked his face out of the lineup in 1991. The evidence gets weirder. He was arrested in 1974 for child molestation and released in 1977. There were no Zodiac letters sent during this period. He was a school teacher and was fired in 1968 because he molested some of his students. And in one of the letters he threatened to kill school children. He wanted to be a bouncer at his friend Ralph Spinelli's nightclub, but he wouldn't let him. He told him he will go to San Francisco to kill a cabbie. That night Paul Stein, a cab driver, was shot point blank in the head. Multiple search warrants were made against Allen in the early 90s, and the search conducted found bombs and formulas for bombs, which were identical to the ones found in the Zodiac letters. An unidentified man named Lee was known to associate with one of the victims, and Allen always went by his middle name. He died in August 1992, a month before he was meant to meet up with investigators about the case. Evidence against he was overweight, and a witness as Allen was not the man they saw on the night of the Paul Stein murder. Fingerprints did not match, and a palm print found on a letter didn't match, and it did not match on a stamp licked. Allen had a habit for getting other people to lick his stamps because the glue made him sick. No one was ever arrested during the Zodiac case. Mark Brandon Read, Aka Chopper, was a renowned killer in Australia. However, he only targeted drug dealers and people who made attempts on his life. When he got old, he was told he had liver cancer and had only a few weeks to live. He was asked by the television show 60 Minutes Australia if he wanted one last interview before he died. He accepted. When asked about all the murders, which he previously claimed as self-defense, not him, or he covered them up, he just confessed to all of them, claiming they were never self-defense and he had committed the ones he previously denied. Then he passed away a few weeks later. Went out listing everyone he killed. It shocked everyone. I would suggest looking him up, he's very interesting. The most recent one I've studied that stuck with me is Gary Ridgway. The guy got away with life in prison by giving away the spots where his victims were buried and made the police take him back to the sites to relive the crimes over again. In court videos, he just sits like a deer in the headlights as families of his victims tell him he'll burn in hell and other very nasty things, understandably. But the father of one of his victims was hardcore Christian, and he got up to the stand and said, "Despite everything you've heard today, I believe in Jesus Christ's teachings, and he believes in forgiveness, and sir, I forgive you." And it brought the serial killer to tears, to which the judge told him he didn't have a right to fake any form of guilt, which he clearly didn't have.